As someone who carried a gun as a police officer for 20 years, I can say that it's very important for anybody who's considering either carrying a gun or keeping a gun for personal defense to give it some very thoughtful consideration. It's of course important to select the right firearm, ammunition, holster, and those type of things for whatever situation you might have. And of course you have to take the time to learn how to properly use a gun, and most importantly, to understand proper techniques of gun safety, safe gun handling, safe gun carry, safe gun usage, and safe gun storage.
There's three things that come into play there. There's the tactics involved in knowing how to apply deadly force should you have to use a weapon. There's the legality that's involved. When can I use it lawfully? And then there's the moral thing that comes into code. Can I do this? When that moment of truth, if you will, arrives, can I pull that trigger and stop another human being? So if you're not prepared for all those factors, don't carry a gun. Look at what's right for you.
He and his wife walked up and said, Officer Summers, and again, people still call me Officer Summers to this day, and he said, I want a gun. My wife and I've talked about it. We need to protect our home. We want to protect ourselves. What kind of gun should we buy? My first comment to him was, you need training first.
Well, police officers, depending on which state you're in, I'll use Georgia for an example, they've got to complete a basic mandate class that is extreme. Failure rate on it can be fairly high. It's academics, understanding and applying the law. It's the tactical part of it, carrying your firearm, interpersonal communications, more and more crisis intervention training for mental health, traffic law. There's a lot of things that you've got to learn there. And once that officer gets that peace officer certification, they have to maintain it. My officers, I try to train them at least double what the state requires every year. At least 40 hours of some type of training. And generally, some of them get over 100 depending on the specialization that they have.
One area that's, I think, overlooked the most is mental preparation. And I think it's extremely important that no one carry a gun for the purposes of self-defense if they're not fairly confident that they could take a human life if they ever found themselves in that situation. It would definitely be something that I would give great thought to before I made such an important life choice.
Police have it a lot harder. We're trained to kill anything that's a threat. They're trained to, protect and serve and de-escalate the situation, and typically we don't shoot unless we're shot at either. But if someone's pointing a weapon at us and we go in and it's a hostage rescue, of course, that's it. No thought. They're gonna die, and we're gonna get the hostage, rescued. But police still can't do that. Drop it. They gotta do their rules, and it's so hard for an officer to do.
Taking a life is hard. No one should ever have to take another individual's life. I was working the street and had a partner. Partner was Bill Price. He was my training officer. We were that morning on morning shift, or we're going downtown area. We received a call that a man was walking, shooting a shotgun in the 500 block in Lincoln Avenue in Evansville, Indiana, where I was an officer. We pulled up on the individual. I happened to know the guy. And I'm a country kid out of Tennessee, and it was rabbit season. I thought he'd been rabbit hunting. And I called him by name and asked him how many rabbits had he killed, because again, it was rabbit season. I am on the passenger side of the car. I am left-handed, and I had my pistol in my hand and in my lap, prepared to do whatever I need to do if things got bad. Before I knew it, he crossed the street toward me and set the shotgun on my nose and told me to get out of there. I went blank. The last thing I remember is calling him by name and telling him, okay man, you win. My partner and I drove around the corner and came up behind the building, again across the street from him, called for assistance, and my captain drove up down the middle of the street, and he lowered the shotgun and aimed at the captain, and about 5 of us fired on this individual, killing him. I had only been in the police department about a year and a half. Wasn't ready for that, but I was trained to do what I had to do. Taking that man's life still affects me to this day. It was in the inner city. I was the only African-American officer involved, and my sergeant was so unnerved, rather than uncocking his gun, he fired another round in the air after the individual was down. The word went out in the community that we shot this individual after he was dead. The repercussion was directly directed at me because I was the African American in the inner city and I had shot another African American, or we had shot another African American. Got a lot of threats. At that time, I had to move my family out of our home, because of the threats. Got a lot of nasty phone calls. It affected my immediate family. My father got into it, the individual, over what had occurred. I ended up, the day of that shooting, when I had to do the paperwork in the detective office, I told him I quit. Now this is back in 1977. Things have changed a lot since then. But to this day, I remember every minute, every second, except for that short period of time that gun was sitting on my nose.
Carrying a gun for the defense of self and others, or keeping a gun in your home for defense of self and others, is a very serious matter, particularly in this day and age. And we just would like to encourage people that make that decision to do so thoughtfully and to take the time to do the learning and the research and the practice that goes with that responsibility.
Don't go out and buy a gun if you don't intend to train with it. Don't go out and buy a gun and carry it unless you are willing to use it. You have the proper mindset.
We all want our homes safe, but guns are not always the answer. There are other things that we can do. Again, training is the most vital part. A lot of people ask me all the time, what should I do? How should I do? And I tell them they need to get trained first so they understand how to use a weapon.